Good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
Oh, you're so cool, Brewster! Everybody's a suspect! Hey, Ted, where the hell's Corkscrew? Don't fuck with the Chuck!
Welcome back to Toe Tag Reviews. I'm Chuck, and today we're going to be talking about Wes Craven's masterpiece, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Came out in 1984. This is the film debut of everyone's most favorite and beloved actor, Johnny Depp. And what a fucking debut to have. Robert Englund wasn't originally supposed to play Freddy Krueger. David Warner was. And if that name doesn't sound familiar, he was Mr. Lovejoy in freaking Titanic. Since Sam Raimi included a poster of Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes in his 1981 movie, The Evil Dead, Wes Craven decided to return the favor, and in Evil Dead 2, when Ash goes to the shed, you see his glove right above the doorway, so that's always nice. Lastly, the Sleep Doctor is played by Charles Fleischer, and if you don't know that name, he voiced Roger freaking Rabbit, dude.
Listen, when I say I do, that means I do!
On to the film. The movie actually starts with Freddy Krueger making his iconic weapon in this super dingy, dirty boiler room. Tina is running from him. She ends up waking up to this super sick jump scare. She ends up going to school and meeting up with her friends, Nancy and Glenn, and then her super greasy boyfriend, Rod, shows up. I like this little interaction because she insults the size of his.
I had a hard-on this morning when I woke up, Tina. Had your name written all over it.
There's 4 letters in my name, Rod. How could there be room on your joint for 4 letters?
And his response is very,
Up yours with a twirling lawnmower.
yeah. Tina's mom is actually out of town, so Tina decides to have a sleepover. She's talking to Nancy about their nightmare, and it turns out that they had the same freaking nightmare. Like, what are the chances of that? Rod shows up to his bone session with Tina, and after they scissor each other's bungholes, she ends up having another nightmare, and this is the first time we actually see Freddy, like, in full form. He does a lot of body mutilation throughout this whole film. I never really noticed that until I sat down and watched it for the review, but Rod wakes up to Tina flying around the room, and yet another iconic moment, and we see her getting slashed up. What does Rod decide to do? He dips, because that's always fucking smart. Leave the scene of a crime. And I get it, like, your girlfriend's got butchered, you don't know what the fuck's going on, you just woke up, you're disoriented. Looking from the outside, that's definitely the wrong thing to do, but being in the moment, I definitely understand why he did it. On Nancy's way to school, Rod jumps out of a bush and grabs her and pretty much tells her, like, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything wrong, somebody else was there. Nancy's dad, who's John freaking Saxon, he uses her to kind of lure Rod out, and that kind of creates this like turmoil between Nancy and her dad, and we can kind of see that play out later on in the film. Nancy's in class, and we get a cameo from Lynn Shay. You'll see her later on in like the Insidious franchise and everything. She dozes off and sees Tina. She's all bloody and in a body bag, but she ends up following her to the basement / boiler room looking thing. Nancy ends up having an encounter with Freddy, but she ends up burning herself and wakes up freaking out in class. Nancy ends up going to visit Rod in jail to get some new information, and with this new information she starts putting all these pieces together. Nancy, Rod, and Tina, they all had the same nightmare, so something's definitely fucking going on here. We get another famous scene with Nancy in the bathtub and Freddy's glove coming up. So fucking cool. When she gets out of the bath, she's watching The Evil fucking Dead. Evil Dead rocks, man. Nancy and Glenn go to visit Rod in jail. Freddy ends up killing him. It kind of makes it look like a suicide. I like that whole interaction because no one's gonna believe, like, especially her dad, no one's believing them. And it's the most, like, frustrating thing. Everything they're saying is actually playing out. At Rod's funeral, Nancy tells her dad about what the killer looks like, and you see on his face, like, he knows something. Nancy goes to the sleep doctor to take a sleep test, and she wakes up, realizes that she can pull him out of the dream world. She ends up pulling his hat out. This part really confuses me because when she wakes up, out of nowhere, she's got a fucking like gray streak in her hair. Like, what? That is the biggest what the fuck moment. She tells her mom, who's a fucking drunk in this movie, about the guy in her dreams, and she ends up backhanding Nancy. Like, what the fuck? It's a little strange, but okay. Turns out her mom knew about Freddy and the whole situation all along. Nancy ends up going home. Her mom pretty much just lays it all out for her about Freddy Krueger. He was a child murderer, and since the court didn't do anything, they ended up finding him and lighting him on fire, a bunch of the victims' parents. The plan is to bring Freddy out of the dream world and into the real world. She ends up calling Glenn and tells him to just be on standby. Don't fall asleep. Guess what he does? He falls asleep. Since he fell asleep, we get the VHS fucking rewind moment, dude. And how can it not be? This scene is so cool. The way they crafted it, the way it was shot, all the blood, so fucking cool. Nancy ends up pulling a Kevin McAllister and booby trapping the whole house. And as she nods off, she goes into the dream world. She grabs Freddy right when her alarm goes off, and when she wakes up, she realized that she actually brought him out. Her plan actually worked. She ends up lighting him on fire, which is really ironic because he was already on fire. But her dad comes to save the day with his fellow police officer, and if he looks familiar, he was the cop in Scream. When her dad comes in to save the day, they break down their bedroom door, and Freddy is on fire on top of her mom. We see her body like sink into the bed, which was a really cool effect. I don't really understand that part though. Like, where's she going? Hell. Nonetheless, it was such a cool moment. But she ends up telling Freddy that she's not scared of him and that she's gonna take back all the energy that she gave him. When he goes to attack her, he ends up vanishing, which is a little strange. The movie comes to an end with the Jump Rope Girls singing the iconic 1, 2, Freddy's Coming For You song. We find out that her mother and all her friends are still alive. But when she gets in Glenn's car, which is a convertible, by the way, the fucking hood comes down, and you see Freddy's striped sweater as the pattern on top of the car. And the mom ends up getting sucked through the window by Freddy, but it is the worst fucking blow-up doll I've ever seen. Hands down, that thing looked bad. The pros, it was a flawless idea, creating Freddy Krueger and the whole backstory of him, especially coming out in 1984, having a dream monster, brilliant. And not only that, but like this movie put him in the big three. Whenever you hear horror, you think of there's other obviously icons out there, but those are the big three. The cons, as much as Nancy is like the final girl, she's really fucking annoying in this movie. Every time you talk to her, she's really chaotic and really bratty. Like she'll be sweet and talk to you one minute, and whenever Glenn says something, she like snaps at him.
A sort of a guard, okay? Okay?
What a bitch.
And it's just that whole brattiness, it just bothers the shit out of me. But other than that, the characters are pretty solid. The story's great. The acting's fantastic. Toe tag score, 4 out of 5. This has been my review for A Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm Chuck, and as always, don't forget to like, subscribe. Until then, see you later.